Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast. This is the podcast where we have digital discussions, the worlds of TV, film, pop culture, sports, social media, everything really. Depending on the guest, we talk about and cover it all. As always, you know me as Peter Meliodas, and on Twitter and on social media, you know me as PD Beats. And my guest is an actor who stars in the film Midway. We're with Kenny Liu. Kenny, welcome to Popternative, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
No problem. So, Midway, huge film, and you're in it, and
Yeah.
the reception's been pretty awesome from the trailer. Just so much going on. Congrats on that, man. It must be an exciting time for you.
Yeah, it's super exciting. This is the largest thing that I've done so far. It's a great thing to catch in theaters. I just caught it last night for the fourth time. A bunch of my friends in the Bay Area organized like a screening at my theater right here by my parents' house. So it was like a homecoming plus like getting to see myself on the big screen with all my friends and people I didn't even know either. It was awesome.
No, absolutely. And we're in an interesting time right now with streaming and all these amazing devices, all this content coming on streaming devices that people are kind of watching at home. And a movie like Midway, I feel like challenges that, disrupts that a little bit, because it's like you have to go see that in the big screen.
Yeah, you got to see it, because something that we miss out with streaming is that, I used to feel this. I'm like, you know what? If I can watch it by myself, why would I ever go to a theater? And I understand that. But what gets missing is that, if you're watching it with friends and you can like feel people like experience this movie with you, and that's like a whole different experience. That's something that like we used to do a lot, back in the day. And then even on top of that, the amount of like immersion that you can get with especially something like Midway, like they did the effects so well, you feel like you were there, and that's not going to happen with, like your laptop or even like as like good of a home video system that you got at home. Like it's just not going to compare.
No, absolutely. Something also about, the effects, of course, and the big screen, but there's a communal aspect of going to the films is really important too. And I don't think that's ever going to die down.
Yeah. I hope not, because I mean, that's the part of it, is that I think that art and movies, even popcorn movies, like are meant to have you discuss, like it'll open your mind. And I hope that film continues to do that, as opposed to, just be something that you consume like junk food or something,
So, you're an actor, you're from San Francisco area, correct?
Bay Area.
And you actually have a interesting path of where, like, how you kind of started acting, and you started in the tech industry before that.
That's right. Yeah. So I can speak to that for a while. Like I graduated from UC Berkeley as a mechanical engineer, never worked as one, became a web developer instead, was doing startups in Silicon Valley. And I believed, I don't know if it was me being like Asian growing up in America, but I believed that, that was all I had, that was the only path that I could go. And then after I finished, doing my startup, like we fortunately got funding from Google and got bought out by another company. And I was like 27, 28 at the time. And I was like, wow, I got like, I checked off one of my bucket list items. What do I want to do with my life now? And at the time I was already, like dabbling and acting a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? Let's freaking go for it. I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't take the plunge. And then I moved to LA. That was almost 6 years ago now.
Well, that's crazy. You mentioned the word dabbling, like dabble, and I like that word, and it's interesting because of the fact that a lot of people in this industry that I find go very far and are successful in the entertainment industry wear many hats. They're writers, they're actors, they're directors, they're web developers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How important is it for Kenny Liu to dabble in a little bit of everything?
Oh, it's so important, like especially now, like it's not as clear cut as it used to be, like back in like Dustin Hoffman's day, you can get discovered on stage or whatever. Nowadays, not really like that, because you're saturated with TikTok and Twitter and YouTube, and there's just so many avenues to, get your brand or get your work seen. And so, you really have to branch out and figure out like what to do. So most of the people that I know that have done well don't even think of themselves as just actors. They're like small business owners, really, because they're managing, like, I'm doing marketing, I'm doing like product development, I'm doing all of that.
Oh yeah,
and
many
you
hats.
have to think about it that way. Many hats, and whatever skills you require, you have to leverage that to the next step of your success.
You're using perfect keywords to kind of segue to my next questions. First it was dabble, then you said avenue, so many avenues. What's your favorite avenue in terms of the industry right now? I mean, there's TV, there's film, there's podcasts. What are you kind of interested in right now?
For me, it'll always be film.
Yep.
I was watching Midway in the theater last night, and then just living and breathing that movie with all these strangers, like, it reminded me, I was like, wow, like, I'm not watching it with the rest of the cast here. I'm watching it with, bread and butter Union City people. And it really reminded me of why I did this, like, why did I get into it in the first place? So for me, it'll always be film. And I'm always dreaming about, like, it'll be a really great film if, we did this or did that. So I'm always gonna come back to that.
How important is it as well for people to kind of realize that, a movie like this movie, because I still think people don't understand that, this was a movie that came out this year, but this movie took a long time to make.
Yeah.
I don't think people kind of understand the process of it. Do you think that's because I always ask about misconceptions of the industry on my show? Do you think that's a misconception, like how long people realize it takes for things to be made?
Oh yeah. Like, this actually was quick compared to like most films. I got a film that I was the star of that I shot 2 years ago, and then it's gonna come out next year. And so then like all that work that I put in 2 years ago. And the excitement and whatever, I kind of really, after we wrapped, I pretty much had to let it go because I'm like, forget about it. I'm not going to be able to talk about this because I signed NDAs and all that stuff. And then when it does come out finally again, then I got to get that engine revved up again. For Midway specifically, we finished it last year. Like, I shot it in like September last year. And then fortunately I only had to wait a year before, I can talk about it and like show these pictures and whatever. It just like, it's like a time warp,
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because I know like Finn Wolfhard that was in like Stranger Things. I think that happened too when he was in It. He filmed It before he filmed Stranger Things, I'm pretty sure.
yeah.
So I think that was, I think, maybe people didn't realize that he was going to be such a huge star in Stranger Things, and they kind of had that, movie was going to be awesome regardless. But that was definitely the gravy on the mashed potatoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That shit happens all the time too, because then you you do a film, you don't even know if it's going to go well, and then like fast forward a year later, like suddenly you're like at the top of the heap or something, and then like your whole perspective changes. It's like this industry is wild. Like, you're always like at the top or at the bottom, or
There were some good movies that came out this year, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there were some good movies. Like, there was some funny movies. There were some sad, compassionate movies. Like, it was a cool year for movies.
I agree. I still have to catch so many movies. I haven't seen Joker yet. I haven't seen Jojo Rabbit yet. I haven't seen Parasite yet. And those are all movies that I really want to see because they kind of break the mold. And like, a lot of people complain about, comic book movies taking over, and like, we need fresher content or whatever. And I've been dying to see like very modern, fresh content, and I haven't seen it yet. So no spoilers.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I think it would be an interesting conversation right now because you worked in the tech industry. You know the process of how startups get funding and the success and all that and the ROI and everything. You know about that, so I'm excited to have this conversation right now because I believe it was Martin Scorsese. I don't know the exact specific about it, but he was just talking about how everything that's being made only right now is like Marvel and comic book movies, right? I mean, people are going to see it. That's what's making money. You're gonna do what makes money, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's like a bigger conversation, like I read Scorsese's article and he was talking about, I also know a lot of filmmakers that even if they have like legendary names like Scorsese, they're still having trouble getting films made.
Yeah.
Like it's really crazy because he had to put The Irishman on Netflix. You know, like he wasn't able to get that in theaters like Martin Scorsese. That's kind of wild. So that's kind of the perspective that he's speaking from. At the same time, a lot of my friends, like I love comic book movies myself. I hope to be in one. At the same time, it's like there's that conflict of like, is that I believe that if you expand the definition of art, then Marvel comic book movies are art. You know, like I've never seen like 9 movies like basically getting strung together to make a cinematic universe. You know, like that's insane. You know, like how much of a coordination does it take to do that?
I also find it such a wacky industry in terms of like the Joker, which is like a non-canon film that's not even a superhero movie, so to speak, right? It's like an origin story, and it's become one of the largest grossing comic book movies of all time.
I know. We've
Isn't that
always been
crazy?
fascinated. I know. I feel like what was really great though is that like it kind of combined what Scorsese was saying with the comic book universe, I guess, because the Joker's always been such a fascinating character for all of us, you know? Like we all like know that person. And so then like when they did such a deep character study of him, they like really, I don't know if humanize is the right word, but then like you got to understand like this crazy psychopath, you know, like it's crazy. I think it's great to have films like that would open things up for discussion.
Well, it definitely did, and there's a lot of TV shows too that open things up for discussion. I think that's what people want. I remember when the first season of 13 Reasons Why that was basically taking on suicide. I mean, that was just like the discussions that came from it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So my next question is, do you think that we're moving towards an age now? We're not specifically everything will be made for that, but people want films that are going to kind of like create a discussion and create that narrative, like Jojo Rabbit you mentioned before too. That comes to mind as well too. Right?
I mean, I think that films and even theater has always kind of had that purpose. So I think that, you know, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially the past 10 years, like we have swung in kind of the direction of like, oh, we got to make some money off this, but it's a pendulum, you know, it's not like a directional thing. I think people need both, and it just kind of swings back and forth. So I believe that's going to swing in that direction.
It's crazy. It's been such a crazy time. You know, we talked about Midway a little bit. You want to talk a little bit about like your character without kind of giving them spoilers? Kind of like what's your character all about in that movie?
Yeah, so I play the only Chinese hero in that story. It's a World War II movie about, you know, the fight between America and Japan, and the Battle of Midway, which is a turning point for America against Japan. And there's a brief moment in the movie where Captain Doolittle, who's like one of the most famous pilots in the U.S. Air Force at the time, he crash lands in China, and he's about to be executed by the Chinese army because they think he's a German spy. And out of nowhere, this poor school teacher named Zhu Xuesan, he barely speaks English, but he hears about this and he goes, holy crap, I can help. And then he like just jumps in the middle of everything, and then he ends up saving Doolittle's life. Him and his family like nurse Doolittle and his men back to health, get him back to American territory, and then Doolittle goes back and helps win the freaking war. You know, and it's just kind of like really symbolic of what the Chinese people went through during that time, because they didn't have much. They didn't have even like a government infrastructure, didn't have any food or education or anything, but then they gave what they could to help the Allies win the war. And in the end, they paid a big price because hundreds of thousands of people got killed just because of helping Doolittle.
Mm-hmm. So it was, so when you kind of found out, like, so you auditioned for the role, right?
Yeah.
And because it's funny because, you know what? I don't ask the question anymore, but I started asking people like how they got the role and everything, right? And then some people were saying, oh, it's a funny story, right? And then I had like two in a row, and I was like, okay, I'm going to ask this question. Then everyone else was just like, oh, I auditioned for it, got the call back. Like, I'm like, well, that was a waste of a bit.
I know, I totally hear you. Because then sometimes a role it comes to you in a really weird way or like serendipitous way.
I think the coolest story I had too, that someone, Joe Neves, who was on How I Met Your Mother and a bunch of other shows, he played the bartender on How I Met Your Mother. He was just coming in for one episode as a cop. showed up and people didn't realize that he was coming in. He was like, "Oh, like we don't need this scene; it's getting cut out. I'm sorry." But it's like, you know what? We have like Carl the bartender role that we're kind of looking to do, and it's recurring. Do you want to read for that quickly? And he did.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. There's always stuff like that. But unfortunately for Midway, I basically auditioned for it and I got it.
Well, no, it's not unfortunate. It's fortunate that you got it, but unfortunately for the podcast, it's a boring story.
Right. Exactly. There's some really cool stories on set though. Like, preparing for the role was really crazy because this guy is Chinese, but then he's not just Chinese. He's like from the backwoods of China. And so then like I had to prepare an accent in Chinese and in English for this role. So that it was really nuts because I was asking them, it was like coming down to the wire. Like I only had like 2 weeks left to prepare for this role. And then I kept asking them for a dialect coach because I was like, I have nobody online speaks like this, like nobody.
Yeah.
And then, so then like, they were like, yeah, we're trying to find him. And then I was like, F this, I'm going to go find it myself. And I called up a friend of mine that lives in Shanghai and he had family that grew up around that area. And I had his uncle record my lines for me, like, so then the like the depth that I had to go to like find, what I needed to do for this part was insane.
That is amazing, man. No, that is amazing. It sounds like it was one of those moments in your career that, gets you kind of excited for the what's next, right? You did this movie, it's out, you know what I mean? You're on kind of a high right now. It's like you want to continue riding that wave. What's the wave? What could the wave look like for Kenny Lou in the next kind of couple of years?
That's a great question. I've actually been playing a lot of real people, like before this, I was playing Sergeant Eddie Chen, who was a real soldier in the Iraq War for The Long Road Home. That was 2 years ago. It was a military show. In between that, I played. I don't know if you know this, but then I'm like popular online to play as playing Gohan in the live action adaptation of Dragon Ball Z.
So we had Peter Kalamis, who did the dub of Goku on Dragon Ball Z on our show. And he did a Kamehameha on my show, and it like blew up.
Oh shit, that's so funny. Yeah. So all that stuff, and then after that, like I played Chu Xie-san, who's in this part, who's a real person. And then next year, I'm the lead of a drama that is based on a real event. There's a cop in 2015, an Asian American guy who got indicted by a grand jury for accidentally killing a black man. And in his case, it really was an accident. Like he accidentally discharged his firearm in this dark stairwell, and this bullet ricochets down the flight of stairs and hits this guy in the heart of like a floor below that he even know was there, and he dies.
Wow.
And he gets indicted by a grand jury. Yeah, and it's crazy. And it's something like in New York City, like the Asian American community was like, you guys just threw the Asian guy under the bus, because no cop had ever been indicted by a grand jury at that point for manslaughter.
Is that going to be a film, like a wide release, limited release, or?
Yeah, well, we don't know that yet. It's independent production, and right now it's bouncing around the film festival circuit. Okay. All I know is it's going to come out next year. Okay. So yeah, hopefully I'll see it in theater.
You're smiling, yeah. It's No, that's amazing, man. Well, Kenny, I think we'll wrap up, but man, this was a blast talking to you, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Peter.
No, absolutely. Where can people follow you on social media to keep up?
You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at the Kenny Lou, which is LEU.
That's amazing, man. Well, seriously, congrats with Midway, and all the best in the future as well, man.
Absolutely, Pete.
No problem. This has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. And until next time, this is Kenny Lou and Petey Beats signing off.
Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.